Howdy everyone, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. You know a line I've always hate hearing in response to anyone enjoying something? It is better than it has any right to be. For all intents and purposes, this praise is more of a backhand slap to the face because it assumes that the concept in and of itself is deserving of mockery, that it turned out to be actually good is a miracle in and of itself, when really anything can be good if written well, and adding that it's just being an asshole. I'm sorry to say that, but when I look at other people's reviews on this game I'm about to talk about, I just can't help but say, what the actual hell? Because today, we are talking about one of my favorite games of all time, that being Pokemon Explorers of Sky. Well, technically it's Explorers of Time, but Sky is just literally the improved version. But in any case, and those comments really do a disservice to this game because I argue it's some of the best written material in the Pokemon series, bar none. And no, I am not joking, I genuinely believe it. If I had to give a reason why I think so, it might be because it's trying to be interesting rather than appealing, which I know that sounds similar, but the best way to put it is, an idea can be interesting but not appealing to most people, which Pokemon tries to be most times than not, so there's that. And really, I think that's why some more of the spin-offs actually really are interesting more times than not, but that's a whole other matter. Anyway, Mystery Dungeon. Mystery Dungeon was a spin-off series made by Chunsoft. You probably don't know them. They made this little RPG series you probably never heard of. Dragon Quest? Yeah, seriously. They made the first 4 base games with Yusuke Horii, the creator of the series himself, who ran the company at the time before the whole Square Enix thing, and it's complicated, I don't want to go into it. People smarter than me can talk about it. But in any case, we need to talk about the 4th game and one character from it, that being Torneko. Torneko is a character from 4 who was a merchant who wanted to be, the best merchant. So that meant he wanted to try to find good stuff to sell. And so they decided to make his own game, which led to the birth of the Mystery Dungeon franchise. Which, you might be wondering, wait, franchise? Yeah, this is a little confusing because it's also tied to another aspect and it's Short version is, after they made that game, they also spun it off into its own series with Shiren the Wanderer, who's still around to this day. Heck, he got a game a year ago, I believe? And that's neat that it's still going. However, when you think of Mystery Dungeon, most people are gonna think you're talking about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Ironically enough, I didn't know this until I was researching a little more to see if I could say something that these people didn't mention, but apparently this series actually saved their company. Yeah. It's from an article that I had to ask a friend of mine to translate because they knew Japanese, and basically they said, yeah, this game series actually saved the company. Which is really weird when you learn the history of the game is actually based on when the producer of Pokemon, at one point, decided to say, hey, you guys have an interesting formula. Maybe we should try it. Of course, we should try to make it a little easier because, it can be a little difficult. Let me put it to you like this. For fans of this game in general, you know the Zero ISIL? Think that, but that's the base game. I'm not joking. In any case, after the first game came out to much critical acclaim, in fact I kind of learned about this later on because it was really weird to learn this, there's apparently a PC Korean version of this game. Yeah, I think it's lost media, but that's cool to learn, right? With Gen 4 out and arriving, they decided to plan the next game, and for whatever reason decided to make multiple versions of the game. Because, that's a good idea and won't hurt the market. I swear on my life, they should really stop doing it. And really, people who buy the game packs, stop it. You're being a dumbass. However, like Pokemon always does, they always release a better version that just combines the two into one better version, plus with additional content. Which is what we're playing today, Explorers of Sky. Which is also ironically the worst reviewed game in the series, which I'm more amazed that these games get low review scores in general. What the actual hell? Seriously, if you ever wonder why people don't respect big review company stuff, I point them to this. Wow, really? they gave this game a lower score than this game. Plus, I don't need to reference the God Hand incident, which actually something that was added that I actually didn't know, was that person didn't actually even barely play the game, and just wrote a review based on that. Like, what the actual hell? And honestly, some people have really unrealistic expectations for some games, and will just shit on something just because it's not trying to be that. So the fact that these games will have a low score in general will forever baffle me in all regards, as what we have here is, again, in my opinion, one of the best Pokemon games ever. So let's actually dive into Mystery Dungeons, Explorers of the Sky, and see why I think that. The game begins with a questionnaire that will determine what Pokemon you will become, which, while I enjoy, I think there should have just been an option to also just reselect after the fact, because sometimes we don't want to be the Pokemon they select. It would have been nice, but whatever, I don't really care. I only bring it up because you could choose your partner Pokemon, but not yourself? It's just something personal. And for the record, I chose Bulbasaur and called him King just to be a callback to my old buddy. In any case, after that, the story really begins on a stormy night where two people are stuck in a storm trying to hold on to dear life to each other. However, one of them lets go and we soon arrive on a beach. But go back to fainting real quickly. We are then introduced to our partner Pokemon, who's a big scaredy cat who wants to try to help and get into the Explorer's Guild, to gain some courage and actually become an explorer. However, he chickens out and runs away. He heads to the beach to ponder on things, and we get a beautiful shot that I don't think I'll ever get truly tired of myself. In fact, if I could praise anything, it's the series' use of pixel art and music that are just really well done. Like, holy crap, this OST is so amazing. Like, if you genuinely do not like this OST, I don't think we can be friends. It just hits all the right notes in general, and I just love it. There's also a remastered one on YouTube, which you can find easily. It's really good, you should listen to it in general. He then soon notices us and tries to wake us up. After a bit, we are a little confused as, shocker, we were actually a human, but for whatever reason, we're a Pokemon. A Pikachu in my case, which is both good and bad, but we'll talk about that later. In any case, after trying to remember more of the past, two bad Pokemon come in and attack him, trying to take one of his precious treasures away from him. He then begs us to help him try to get his treasure back, and we happily oblige. This is where the tutorial would begin, however I'm gonna hold out on it a little more until we get there. So after beating them senseless, we quickly get back his treasure, a rock with a mysterious pattern. And was his whole reason of why he wanted to become an explorer, because he wanted to solve these types of mysteries. However, he's still a coward, so he asks you to join him so that he can become one. And with little options to go on, you decide to readily accept his offer. After getting allowed in, you meet Chatot and Wigglytuff, the boss of the guild, who's mostly a big baby but still loves exploring, which they happily accept you on board and allow you to become an official team. And it's here where you'll be stationed at for the most part until endgame. And with the setup done, let us actually begin the gameplay loop. After a quick motto beginning every day, you'll be given a quick run-up on each sort of mechanic throughout the entire game. And here is where we can actually begin explaining the game system. But let's start off with a simple explanation. The world is really out of whack, which we'll explain in a bit in due time. Never gets old. However, due to that, this has caused places to spawn called Mystery Dungeon. These are places that have different layouts every time, meaning you can never truly have the same experience going into one, sort of. And sometimes people need help and have issues in those dungeons. Whether that be help them find an item, get an item, or fighting a Pokemon and arresting. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, that must offer a lot of possibilities. And it does, sort of. See, the map and the whole entire game for the most part is on a grid-based system, meaning everything is segmented and works on those tiles. And soon enough, after a while, you'll begin to see the same pattern over and over again, which is not a criticism in and of itself, as this can be applied to all roguelikes, but it's something you'll notice really quickly on. However, unlike most roguelikes you'll play like Hades or something, in this game, everything's random in the dungeon. Because unlike other roguelikes, sure, there are things that are random, but there are just certain certainties you can find within those games. Not here though. Like for example, items. Maybe you'll find no good items for a long time, or maybe you'll find a few of the items that you really want on the next floor. It's really up to chance, and sometimes you'll just run into a bad matchup at times. Maybe you'll find the stairs really quickly and be spawned right next to them. Or maybe not. It all depends on your luck, which is important to understand in general. And really, the only things I can say for certain are things that are going to stay consistent are outlaws, where you'll either appear in front of them or they'll appear somewhere near you trying to run away, which are the only two types of outlaws. There's also monster house. I'll talk about those in a moment. But my point is, this game can get really weird with you if you're not pre-preparing, which is where the important part of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon comes in. It is your job to pre-prepare to make sure that when those bad situations happen, you're prepared to handle them. So how do you prepare for these dungeons? Well, like in Pokemon, you got 4 main skills to use in a fight. And well, having a good spread of moves is always good to have, because they actually work differently here in this game, as moves now have different effects in general. Like Thunderbolt not only targets your opponent, but everything around you in a 1 square tile. Or Energy Ball that hits everyone in a straight line, hitting foes from a long distance. Or maybe something like Discharge or Earth Power that hits all foes in a room. That is very powerful, to say the least. So picking the right moves for the right situation is always important. There's also linking moves that unlock later in the game, where you can have 2 moves combined into 1 to maybe do more damage, but to me it's more of a wasting time thing, as usually 1 move is usually enough for the most part to defeat most foes, as long as you know what you're doing. And even then, more times than not, it's always better just to not do so, because more times than not, you're just wasting your power points in general. So, that's just me. And it's also important to remember that TMs also exist in this game, and trying to make sure that Pokemon can learn a bunch of moves in general, maybe learn a move a little earlier than they were supposed to. And again, it's always important to balance out your team. And while that's important too, you also gotta think about the items you're holding as well, as yes, you can hold an item. In this series, you can hold various sorts of items, like a berry, but in more times than not, you'll be carrying something called a band. These usually give you a special benefit, like an attack or defense bonus, which is really useful, as maybe it can help you push you over the edge, and maybe make a move that was once pretty okay to actually pretty good, that can actually now one-shot most foes in a certain dungeon. Though I say you can wear items, more times than not it is just the bands, because the bands just give a benefit that's more times than not useful, as carrying a berry can only have so much of a use. And really, later on when you gain access to heal seeds, more times than not you don't need any of those berries, unless you need food, which we'll talk about in a moment. Though I kinda wanted to segment for a moment to talk about one item that always confused me. Like, I found this item really late in the game, where basically it allows you to, well, it doesn't allow you to do anything, it just allows foes to hit you more likely with crits. I have literally no idea why this is in the game. It just sounds like a terrible, terrible idea. My point is, coming in with the right item is also important, and maybe carrying a few more items just in case. Like an Oranberry when you need a quick heal, or when you need to heal seed to just, again, heal a status effect, or maybe an orb to stall a room to get some quick recovery in. Orbs are powerful items in the game that allow you to change the board state, for lack of a better term, and let me tell you, while they are cool, more times than not I found them useless. It's mostly because they're in this sort of in-between spot from genuinely good, like the Petrified Orb that makes all foes in a room stay in place, which helps it in general, but for the vast majority of them, they're just useless. Like, oh cool, I have this Switcher Orb. why don't I just punch the foe out? You know what I mean? They have their uses, but they're so situational that it's like, eh? And really, you could be stuffing your pockets more with the most important item in the game, in my opinion, those being Reviver Seeds. These items are by far the most useful in the game, since for the most part, they decide whether or not you're beating a dungeon. These items allow you to quickly revive after getting knocked out, which is really bad because you don't want to suffer a knockout. If you get knocked out, you lose half of your items and half of your money, which, let me tell you, is not a fun feeling. Which is why I say they're so vital for you, especially in late game, if your team is a little unbalanced, since sometimes you will be forced into places where you'll have a massive disadvantage. Though gracefully, it is not too punishing, as you could still deal damage to most foes in general, even if they're mostly invulnerable to those types of attacks in general, except a few because of just how typing and other abilities work, but another time. You also have a nice blunt hit attack that, I don't know what to call it, I just call it the blunt hit attack, where basically you could deal a small amount of damage, but early on it's pretty good, and for some enemies it's freaking vital. And you know who I'm referencing? I'm referencing fucking Ninja. Fucking hell, that guy is too strong in general. Like, if you don't have a response to him in general, he's impossible to fight for the most part. Especially if he's in the wall, and your partner will not move unless you tell him to not do that, which is just annoying in general. Where basically, because like, just to quickly explain Ninja real quickly, Ninja works by basically having something called Wonder Guard, where basically, he can't be really hurt by anything except unless they are super effective moves in general, which he only has a few. And if you don't have them, well, sucks to be you, you're gonna die. And really, only way you can hit him at times is with a blunt hit, and that's just annoying. It's also worse when you realize and remember that, for whatever reason, they also decided to give Ninja more health for some baffling reason. That was supposed to be the trade-off. He's mostly invulnerable to most Pokemon, in exchange to dying really quickly to super effective moves. Sorry for going off track, but you get the point. Sometimes it's a good idea to make sure you're watching and being prepared. But it does tangentially matter because sometimes your teammate might not be smart enough to know what they actually do, which we need to talk about another mechanic in general. The mechanic I'm referring to is IQ. Yeah, that's pseudoscience nonsense, but in any case, in dungeons you can find something called a gummy, that when eaten by a Pokemon, can raise their IQ, and actually make them smarter. IQ basically works on their logic. Basically, certain enemies have low IQ and will do dumb things, so if you're wondering why the hell they would do that, that's why. It will go up later on as the game gets harder and harder. God, that episode would have been impossible if I did not have Reviver Seed. But later, I swear on my life. However, there's also another cool thing that was added in Explorers of Sky, that being Spinda's Cafe. That basically makes gummies even more useful. See, if you eat one by Spinda, you not only get the IQ bonus, but you can also get a stat bonus, which, let me tell you, they're useful as heck. Though it can cause a bit of lopsidedness. For example, all my stats were really high, except for defense for some reason. I have no idea why. And it's also good to just raise IQ in general because you'll gain minor abilities throughout the game. Like maybe being able to cure status effects a little quicker, or maybe not hitting traps, because yeah, there are traps in this game, which can rival up to Really, some traps are just there and some aren't. Don't worry about them too much. They're there just to be there. And mind you, Spinda's shop doesn't really end there, as right beside him is a Wynot recycler. This shop is actually really useful. Basically, he'll take up all your old items you collected throughout your journey and let you turn in some of them for something else, which is useful as you can be sometimes flooded with a lot of items you won't use. Like, for example, an apple. Yeah, you need apples to actually feed yourself and eat them, as in the game there is a hunger mechanic. it basically creates a hard limit on how long you can be in a dungeon for how long. While I'm not a fan of it, I understand its purpose and can see its design benefit. However, sadly, more times than not, you can't ignore them since most dungeons are really short, like, most don't even go past 15/20, and if you don't include checkpoints in the middle, you don't need to ever really worry about them unless you're going out of your way to explore for the most part, which I do, but even then, not all the time. And even then, dungeon exploration will usually provide you with what you need for the most part, as long as again you're exploring, and then some, which is again why the recycling is useful in general, cause all the slop you might get might not ever actually be good for you in your particular way of playing. It just meant that now I have something to actually gain while collecting these items, which actually incentivized me to actually be more careful on what I collected and seeing what items I could just collect just to recycle them to get a better thing. Plus, you do gain benefits like finding new places to explore, which is really neat in general. Cause yes, sometimes someone in the cafe will tell you, hey, we would like you to do a mission, can you do it? And if you do them, sometimes they'll give you a new location, which is really neat. However, as you'll have noticed that I haven't really talked about some of the problems I've had, well except that Sheninja's issue, but that was just an issue on its own. Let's actually talk about some problems I do have, though this next one I do have is more of a thing you should be more aware of than a hard problem. See, as you're most likely aware, this is a handheld game. Yeah, like no duh. What are you trying to go on? Well, it's meant to be played in bursts, not in a marathon, so this game could get really tiring really quickly unless you enjoy this thing a lot, which I do, but I recognize not everyone's going to enjoy it like that. So please, if I can recommend you anything, please go at your own pace. The game is usually kind enough to tell you when something is going to happen, so say before a big event in general, so that way you can go back and just keep on doing something until you're fully repaired. And well, I say that part 2 because at one point in the game I actually got stuck. Though it's a little weird because throughout the most time, this game is sort of easy. There will be difficulty spikes, but for the most part, you won't really need to worry about challenge in general. But however, there will be points at times where you won't be able to resupply, so that means you either have to do it or else you'll be stuck. Which personally, I'm not a fan of. Like, I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it's not helpful to allow players to just please go at their own pace, which kind of just gels wrong with the nature of the game's do-it-your-own-time pace. It's just weird. However, there is another problem, though this one is more of a thing that I hope they'll consider if they do a remake. That being allowing us to switch out a party for non-important team members before endgame. Because, yeah, you can recruit other Pokemon into your party, but my problem is, for the most part, I'm not going to use them. And this is like, why not? Because for the most part, why would I train up these guys when I'm not going to use them for everything? Like, I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but I'm not going to use them in the main plot, so why would I use them anywhere? Because at points, there will be times where you won't be allowed to bring up other team members. Only the two of you. Which is a problem because I would rather not do that. I would say maybe allow us to send out another team that we can play at. And I can also understand why they restricted this until endgame. And that's mostly because they wanted to make sure that players were at a certain level. And so that way they can make sure, like, okay, we have a good guess that they're at this level, so we can scale around that. But I'm just saying maybe give us an XP bonus or like XP share, like maybe 20 or 30% XP. So that way players have an incentive to do it anyway, but still allow us that freshness of really getting into this design. And that's not even getting into that recruiting in general is a little annoying since it is random. And the only way you can actually gain them is by you taking them out and not a teammate, which is just annoying as hell. Just recruit them automatically or not. I don't care which. I don't mind if there's a chance. I just rather that chance be higher than what it is. And I do want to stress this. I enjoyed the game. I still enjoy it today. It's just that, let me tell you, while I enjoyed it, the repetitiveness can get on most people. And I just think there could be a better way. Though then again, I kinda want to go back to that grinding problem of level scaling. When that's really weird too, because I haven't actually mentioned Treasure Town. Which, can I just mention something right here? I love Treasure Town. I love its theme, I love its aesthetic. I just love it. Seriously, I love that theme so much. I remember listening to it on the bus, going to a family friend's at Virginia, and I just love that song. I just love it. Anyway, in any case, in Treasure Town, there is something called Marowak's Dojo, where basically you can ask to train up a bit to gain some XP. And for the most part, this is really effective throughout most of the game because it gives out a lot of XP early on. So if you do it quickly and do some early on, wow, you'll be really buff for most of the problems because, again, you'll be scaled up for the most part and do really relatively fine. So again, I don't see the reason why, in particular, we couldn't just have team members switch out. Except for important missions, but that's a whole other thing. And I really can't stress this enough. Even with all those problems, I still love this game. And the gameplay loop is still fun. But you know one thing? I could really care less about the gameplay at times. You know what kept me going throughout this entire game, no matter what? It was the plot. So let's actually talk about this game's plot. After the tutorial and all the basic stuff are taught, we learn we have an actual special ability. The ability to see the past or future of certain things when exploring. Like exploring a waterfall cave that was behind a really powerful waterfall. Or rescuing Azuro? I've never been able to pronounce this Pokemon's name right. From an outlaw Drowsy that was trying to kidnap them and use them to gain the treasure. The game also has a bad guy group, and let me just be clear about this. They're meh. The real complaint about them for me is that they're not there enough and they don't do enough in my opinion to be memorable. I mean, like, after one more event with them, they're pretty much gone. I mean, like, they literally pretty much disappear for the most part after Fogbound Lake, where they try to attack Wigglytuff and fail horribly because Wigglytuff is really powerful. And even then, after that, it's not even really entirely earned, it's just there. Like, I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, I just wished it was more handled well. And really, that's really only my real big complaint about this game. Well, the main story, but we'll talk about that later because, really, throughout this, I kind of want to mention this now. Throughout this entire talk about the plot, I'm going to basically just give you the rundown of what happened, but I kind of want to mention this now. In between those moments are a lot of good character bits, funny jokes, here or there. It's really well done, and I think this game's story is really well handled. That, sure, I am just going plot point to plot point, but the in-between is really good too. Like those moments where after a failed mission where you're basically chastised and couldn't eat a meal, the next day your friends come in and give you a little meal just to help you out because they know you're good guys and it's not your fault. And it always touched me like that. I also like the minor cast as well. It's pretty good, like the whole guild is pretty good. And Krogon's there. Yeah, Krogon is just like one of those Pokemon who's just there. I actually didn't mention this in my normal review, and it just took me now talking about him to realize that, oh yeah, Krogon. Krogon also runs the Swap Cauldron. Basically, it's an item where, okay, I didn't mention this either, but in the game you'll find chests. These chests usually contain a special item that a Pokemon can carry. If you carry that item in your inventory, a Pokemon will gain a special stat bonus, or an ability. These are useful and I do recommend collecting them, though only the ones you need, and the Swap Cauldron will basically allow you to trade in some items you have. Though, personally speaking, I rarely ever used it. In fact, this was the first time I ever actually delved into it, which I kind of feel like is a problem, but But really, I do like all of these characters, and they're really lovable. All the little minor stories too. In fact, but let's get back on track. While at Fogbound Lake, we find out it's in possession of not only a beautiful vista, which I have to repeat, the game's pixel art is just really well done, but also in possession of a time gear that was under the protection of the spirit of the lake, Yuxi. What are time gears? See, time is regulated by the time gears, and there has been rumors that something's been going on with them, so they've been under strict protection for a long time. And we quickly learn what's up, as we learn someone has been gathering them for nefarious purposes. That being Grovile, who has been stealing them and actually takes one from Yuxi right after our visits to them. This begins the guild's real, honest attempt to trying to find Grovile and try to stop him. Slightly before that reveal, we are also introduced to Dust Noir, who helped us out a few times, like saving us from a Manetric flock, which, to side note, was actually changed from Luxray for some reason. Like, the reason is that because you can become a Shinx, they thought they should have changed it, and I'm like, why? Luxray works better in general. But whatever. Which, after saving you, the two of you trust him enough because he's also a well-versed and well-respected explorer, so they believe that by asking him, he'll probably have some knowledge, which the only thing he can really tell you is that, well, he knows your ability, which is called the Dimensional Scream and just allows you to peer into the void of time, which, not explaining how it is a thing, but it doesn't really matter. And once he learns about what's going on with the Time Gears and Grovile, he also agrees to join up with the guild to see and help us out. And with his knowledge, we were able to find out where the next Time Gear is, and were luckily able to stop Grovile from taking the last Time Gear. However, he doesn't go down without a fight and easily takes us down. However, luckily with enough time stalling from our buddy, he actually stalls him long enough so Dust Noir can come in. However, during their intervention, there's also mention of some backstory with each other. So after we recovered, Dust Noir decides to just explain what's up, as he drops a bombshell on us. You see, he explains that both him and Grovile are from the future, and Grovile was some sort of thief at the time and went back in time to try to paralyze the world by taking the Time Gears, and Dust Noir came back to the past in order to stop him. And now, with the final Time Gear in place, with no other way for him to get it, Dust Noir decides to spread a rumor to try to get him out of hiding. However, deciding to make sure that no one else intervenes, he goes away and does it himself, which he does. And I get it, but at the same time it's a little annoying because you don't know when, and let me be clear about this, you got 2 days, so do be careful about that. On the last day, either buy a lot of revived seeds because, oh boy, what's about to happen next? Because you see, after tying him up, they send him back to the future. And before he says his goodbyes, he would like to say a personal goodbye to us. And we oblige because, why not? And it's kind of sad in a way. Until he suddenly says, well, this isn't a goodbye. And then suddenly grabs us and taking us to the future. That has become very dark. Your team is very confused by everything as they are not sure of even what's going on anymore and what the heck is even happening. As soon enough, you are put on a stockpile to be executed with Grovile. However, luckily with some quick thinking and teaming up with him, you escape and he reveals the truth. That Dust Noir was lying. Grovile came back to the past in order to save the future. Dust Noir is here to only preserve the future. But why is the world stuck like this? Well, you see, while the Time Gear is regulated, the temporal tower is also what stabilizes it as well. However, due to its collapse, the one who controls time, Dialga, kinda went insane and basically kinda froze the world in a matter of speaking. And the only way to prevent the future from becoming like this is to get the Time Gears back into the temporal tower and to stop it from collapsing. The team is very unsure about this, and even causes some tension with our main buddy even trying to go back to Dust Noir to get a straight answer out of him, even though everything he saw pretty much proved it. However, they do decide that, yeah, he's probably right, and decide to team up with him in order to get back to the past, which he does know about, as we go out to meet Celebi, preparing a portal to the past. However, they are soon ambushed by Dust Noir and even Dialga himself, who is now stuck in this primal way, which is kind of ironic because the primal thing would be later introduced into Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which was kind of cool. But in any case, Primal Dialga is more running on instinct and trying to preserve this timeline. And really, they're in a really sticky position. However, Grovyle isn't deterred. As you see, he wasn't the only one that came back to the past. He also came with another person, a partner of his. That partner was a human that was named after you. Yep, that's right. You were his partner, and before all this, was somehow transformed into a Pokemon who also happened to lose his memory. And really, Dust Noir couldn't even believe his own luck. Getting the one person Grovyle could trust to betray him and their goal? Priceless. This is why Dust Noir took you back to the future, to make sure that there were no loose ends, no matter how small or even nebula. It's a really nice twist in general, in fact. Like, they hint at something more mysterious with Dust Noir, but they make it weird enough that there's something interesting to know, like you don't know where it will go entirely. And like, sure, somebody can figure out what's gonna happen, but that's not the point of a twist. The twist is not to shock you. I mean, like, that's a good bonus, but a good twist is to make you look at a story differently, but still be sensical so that anyone could have saw it. But even if you didn't, here are the clues to tell you, here were all the hints we left along the way. This really disheartens Grovyle a lot, because he really thought there was a chance, and now they're pretty much stuck, surrounded on all sides by Sableye, Dust Noir, who's already strong on his own, but not only that, Dialga, right there. They don't know how to handle this. However, our little buddy figures out a smart plan to quickly get out of there. By using Celebi's powers to teleport, or time travel, small distances, they were able to get close enough to the door to send themselves back into the past. They regroup and begin a plan to actually try to gain the gears again, and to try to find the temporal towers, which was located in the hidden lands. Well, I thought it would have been in the obvious land, but I don't know, that's just me. After collecting one gear, they decide that it would be more efficient to separate, and after a nice scene of the guild coming together one last time to do one more mission, they decide to head off and try to find the key to the hidden land, which, through Torkoal, we learn is actually the item that our buddy has been holding the entire time, and now we need to find the symbol, which, ironically, Chatot and Wigglytuff know from their past. So they quickly go to Brine Cave. Brine? How do you pronounce this? In any case, after a quick run-in with Team Skull and some bandits, they soon find Lapras and Grovyle, where Lapras will take you to the hidden land. Again, might have noticed that I'm leaving out a lot of character moments in general, and again, you're right. I just had to keep emphasizing that the real in-between things are really good. Like, I left out a kind of nice moment with Chatot, where Chatot at the beginning is kind of a dick, not even listening to you when Team Skull was an obvious bad group. But you do realize that, yeah, he still cares about you guys, even if he's a bit hard-headed and well, again, a dick. And to note, once you get to the hidden lands, you can come back and just, restock if you need to. I find that very odd, but After exploring it a bit more, you are actually able to find the way and a passage to the temporal tower, which is in the sky. However, Dust Noir planned ahead and actually ambushes you. However, with some quick planning and some busted moves, you quickly defeat him. However, after your buddy goes up to try to set up the passage to the temporal tower, Dustnor laments that fact that if we succeed, not only will he disappear, but also everything from the future. However, Grovile isn't worried about himself because he already promised himself that he would do this for the future, and even you have to agree. However, you don't worry about yourself, you're more worried about your buddy. As a last-ditch effort, Dustnor tries to strike at us again, but Grovile decides to send him back to the future while we handle the tower to prevent more interference. Leaving us with some parting words, he heads back to the future, as we begin our trek to the temporal tower and begin one of the hardest fights of the game, that being against Primal Dialga, who is now going berserk due to the tower collapsing. And I seriously want to mention this is one of the harder fights in the game, solely because he can really one-shot you if you're not careful. Seriously, bring a lot of reviver seeds if you're not prepared. However, with enough guts, luck, and charm, you're able to defeat him. However, the tower begins to collapse really, as you hurriedly put the gears in place, which was just at the nick of time to prevent the tower from total collapse, as Dialga begins to return back to his normal self and gives us a thanks and sends us on our way, showing us that, yes, the world will begin to return to normal, and thus, you begin your journey home. And it's also time to say goodbye to our little buddy. By far, this is one of my favorite scenes of all time. It just worked so well. I really didn't mention it throughout the entire game, but I think on a thematical and gameplay level, this works so well. This guy has had your back through everything, through thick and thin. Not only on a narrative level, but also on a gameplay level, where he literally watches your back, makes sure that no one can hit you from behind, where he'll try to stop any threats against you, try to help you out if he can. Even if he's a bit of a dumbass. Why are you hitting the guy who can't be hit? Why? I digress. But you get the point. And he really did grow. I mean, like, at the beginning, he could barely even stand in front of a gate. Now he's able to stand against what is essentially a godlike being in front of him. But now, you gotta leave him. But at the same time, it's okay. Because he doesn't really need you right now. He doesn't need you. He just needs to look inside now and find that strength that he's always had. He's just never able to really use it. He slowly turns back forward and with tears in his eyes, begins the journey home. And when he gets home, he spreads the tale of your journey together, keeping on the journey. As he returns back to the beach on one day, and we hear Beach at Dusk. Again, one of the best songs in the game, hands down. It's a melancholy song, really, in the end, as he begins reminiscing on our journey, as bubbles begin flying into the scene. One of the thematical things I actually learned about the game, really interesting because it was this really cool interview done by, it'll be on screen and a link will be provided below, where basically the director talks about the game series as a whole, and he references that this is actually his favorite scene, too, by the way. But he also references the bubbles, where they're supposed to be representatory of meetings, where they're both beautiful, but they're also brief and disappear. As he begins crying, as he just wants to see you again. Then the credits roll. It really is a heartbreaking ending, and I won't lie, it made me cry too. It just hits the right notes on everything that it's trying to do. However, while the game does sort of end on a somber note, the game does truly end on a happier note, as Dialga looks to our buddy's sadness, and through his own power, returns us to reunite with him. And continues our journey, because really, this is a world without an end. And I just love happy endings, so I don't mind if it kind of detracts from that ending, but it's just a me thing. Normally, this is where I would end it, but we need to talk about two more things. That being the special episode and the epilogue. Wait, what? Before we talk about the epilogue, let's talk about the special episodes. These were added in Explorers of Sky, which there are 5 mini-adventures in the game, where you play as another character and play through a level or 2. So, we'll go through a quick summary of their journeys and my thoughts on them. I like them all, but the last one is just clearly the best one. Badoo's story is fine, it's just well enough to characterize him and give him a little backstory to make me more invested in him and make me more care about him, even if he's a dumbass. I swear on my life, that moment will always linger in my head now. Next is the Sunflower one, where it's by far the worst one in terms of content, mostly because you're going through one dungeon, but it's really hard, mostly because you don't have a lot of moves to actually attack foes, so you're kind of stuck in this weird in-between where you're capable, but you're not that capable. Next we have Igglybuff, or Wigglytuff's backstory, and why he became an adventurer, and it's a really nice one, and it does a lot to add to his character in general. The next one is Team Charm, which is just, I don't know why, but I love this one, as it also has a cool track for it. Again, like, I can't stress this enough, the music in this series is amazing. There's also like a remix version out there, it's also amazing, go listen to it. It's just a side adventure, so don't worry about it. There's also the last story, which is actually pretty interesting, and something I think the game could have played with more. This story is basically what happened to Grovyle after he went back to the future. He basically went out and did what he tried to do, trying to give the team enough time to save the world. However, while trying to get there, he's also joined by Dusknoir, as the Sableye, one of the minion groups of Dialga, begins attacking even Dusknoir, causing Dusknoir to go all like, what the hell is going on, and they just agree to join up just to figure out what's going on. As we learn that there's a new minion around, and they're planning to go back in time with Celebi's help, and prevent this from ever happening again. However, we later learned this was a ploy by Dusknoir to use this as a way to make sure that no one gets in its way with one last gambit. By basically getting Grovyle into this particular spot, they'll basically kill him and drain him of his spirit, leaving him a lifeless husk, where Dusknoir will possess him and attack him when they're really up close. Because why the heck would they attack Grovyle? However, during their journey together, Dusknoir began to finally understand Grovyle's goal and reason, which does really affect him as he kind of begins to actually question his own life, his own goals, his own journey, where he actually pushes him out of the way and actually saves him, which does not put him in the good graces of Dialga. Before Dialga could give the final strike to Dusknoir, suddenly the aurora begins to bright up the sky, meaning the sun is affecting the planet again. Time is moving again. This splits out Primal Dialga hard, as he soon flees to try to do anything to stop it. All 3 of them decide to go out to try to stop him, soon knocking him out. And as soon as the sun begins to rise, they also begin to fade away, one by one. And it's another touching scene, like, if I could say anything about this, it does effective writing really quickly, and it's just amazing. I do warn you, do bring a lot of reviver seeds. You will need them. However, a moment later, they all wake up and are alive. But the sun is still up, and still rising. Dialga comes to them, no longer primal. He's not sure of how any of this is happening, but he feels like there's another power at play. But he just says, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And it ends with Grovyle sending a message through the wind, saying, "We live." And I don't know why, but that's another great moment. I can't stress this enough. This story has so many great moments that if I tried to mention them all, I would just be like ranting about this entire game for more than, oh god, I've been going over an hour. So, let's actually talk about something else we need to talk about. Now, you might be wondering, okay, that's nice, but what epilogue? Okay, most people don't go into this because really, it's really deeper into the game. Plus, it's also filled with a lot of filler, which is not bad filler, but it's filler nevertheless. They kind of feel like journeys that were meant to be in the main game, but were just thrown out. I don't know how to explain it to someone other than that. That's just how it feels to me. And personally speaking, I'm more confused on why they didn't just rework some of it. Since for the most part, that's what the Sky version should have been for in general. Just to rework the game. But no, it doesn't really rework it at all. But, again, let's actually talk about what the epilogue's about. So, it's sort of tied to the plot. Sort of. Okay, we need to talk about evolution for a moment. After beating the game, you'll be given the chance to graduate from the guild. Where basically now you'll be able to just be based over here, then over there. There's really no difference. But otherwise, also unlocks using other team leaders, but that's really it. However, after the end of the graduation test, you wake in the Luminous Spring, where basically it's a place where Pokemon can evolve, which was inaccessible for a while due to all the time anomalies. However, it refuses to let you and your partner evolve, due to some distortion of space around them. They're not particularly sure what that means, but they kind of shrug it off and just continue on their day. However, sometime later, you'll meet in your dreams Cresselia, telling us that we are a problem that will cascade into a problem and create a world of darkness. This world of darkness will also be causing a world of endless nightmare, which actually Azurill falls into really early on. We actually have to find Drowsy to get help, which he's actually reformed, which is kinda nice. And while in there, we learn that Cresselia is after us to kill us. Because in order to fix the distortion of space, we need to die. Yeah, seriously. However, they do not accept it and try to figure out more about this as they feel like there's something more going on, so they figure they'll try to find Palkia, the counterpart to Dialga, who controls space. Though it won't be necessary, as he'll straight out teleport inside your new home and say, "What the fuck did you think you were doing to my space?" Then grabs you, takes you to his base, which, side note, when I was younger I actually got stuck here because I didn't bring any reviver seeds. Again, this is why I'm harping on it so much. Sometimes the game will, again, throw you in situations where you will not be able to resupply, so I had to replay this section a lot, and let me tell you, it's annoying. In any case, after fighting him, we go into his nightmare, where we meet him, and he kinda explains again that, yeah, you're causing a distortion of space, and I need to stop that. We try to explain and try to learn more about what's going on, but soon enough Cresselia comes in and says, "Hey, what are you doing? Why aren't you killing them? We should kill them." And Palkia's now like, okay, like, yeah, I think they're the problem, but however, they don't seem to be a problem, but he still agrees to it regardless. However, soon enough, another Cresselia comes in and reveals to us that the Cresselia we've been seeing was actually a Darkrai. He then reveals a few bombshells, which is whatever. So, okay, short version is, he's actually the one distorting space and was the one who was trying to kickstart the world's paralyzation, and was also the reason why we became a Pokemon. Okay. My real issue here is that the reveal is sort of there. Like, we're just plain out told about it without needing to learn more about this. There's nothing more to learn. We just simply learn, yeah, here are the facts. I don't know, it just feels like we're rushing through the details, all the character bits and whatnot. And that's my entire problem with this entire section. It feels like you're going to plot point to plot point to plot point without much in between. What's worse is that it kind of just also ends. Because you see, Darkrai then leaves and tells ya, "I'm going to Dark Crater, meet me up there." And we do go up there and fight him, where he goes like, ugh, I'm defeated, but I'll go back in time or somewhere I don't know and fight you there. And then Palkia comes in and says, oh, no you don't, and then super attacks him with one of his mega attacks as he travels into the portal where he might have lost his memory. And no one's like worried about this, and it's just like, whatever. Then you bail out and return home. Yeah. It kind of feels like the ending from NGS 5 for some reason. Like, I don't know why I'm getting that vibe, but that's just the vibe it gives off. Like, this was super rushed, and they didn't have enough time to actually flesh it out and make it more meaningful. It just sort of happens. And well, since this is over an hour long, I might as well add my own 2 thoughts on this matter. Really, if they were trying to do something more interesting, I would have done a 2 Darkrai plotline, where basically you're dealing with not only the present Darkrai, but the future Darkrai, who after the future change, he was like, well, I'm not gonna deal with this, I'm gonna go back in time and fix this shit. Where basically he hatches a new plan to try to go and start a new world of darkness. And by joining up with himself, he would basically try to start this plan off for the most part, and maybe bring in some old future Pokemon just to come back, which would have been interesting. But my point is, there should have been more to this, as there's an interesting idea here, and it's like, eh? And really, I kind of hate that at the end of this adventure that I have been telling you I love, I'm ending on this note of, eh. Because really, at the end of the day, this last section is really tedious to a game that's really well done. Like, if you ignore this epilogue, which most people do, and I really don't blame them, I just wanted to talk about it and give my 2 cents on the matter. This game is just too good, and you can mostly ignore it. It doesn't really matter all that much, and it's just there. Overall, this game is amazing. I love it. There's really not a lot wrong with it other than the things I mentioned. And I really cannot stress this enough, and I really do recommend you play it. Please, for the love of all that is good, go play it or listen to the OST. I don't care which. And now with some love out of my, we'll need to go back to Power Rangers and talk about the Neo Saban era. Joy.